Hello, guten Tag, und grüß Gott. Today is Sunday, March 27th, 2022. Another fine day with sun, warm temperature, and unlike the Ukraine, of course, we have the good weather. But today I also have someone, a guest with me, and that is my son Patrick. And he's right here, so say hello, Patrick.
Hello there.
Okay, so today's video, the first thing that I'd like to do is introduce a new piece of information to my videos, and this is an interesting book I found at some bookstore somewhere. It's called "The Most Brilliant Thoughts of All Time in 2 Lines or Less." Now, I was intrigued by this because here's the book. Okay, I was intrigued by this because the most brilliant thoughts, who in the hell has the hubris to think and say that they can select the most brilliant thoughts? But, you know, if in 2 lines or less especially. So, and then, you know, how am I going to present any kind of wisdom or brilliant thoughts out of this, you know, just by selecting? I may be selecting really stupid things, you know, we never know. But, you know, I decided that I'm just going to go, you know, with a random kind of approach to this. And I stuck a bookmark in the middle of it, and I just wanted to see what comes out. So I'm going to look and see what comes out as brilliant thoughts. You know, I mean, I'm interested in brilliant thoughts. Isn't anybody interested in brilliant thoughts? Especially in all the stupidity that's going on right now in politics and all kinds of things around the world. War. Oh my God, there it is. So, hey, I kind of looked at this and I didn't, you know, I mean, it's just my opinion and how brilliant these things are. But here's one that says, all passions exaggerate. It is only because they exaggerate that they are passions. I don't know. Is that brilliant? An emotion ceases to be a passion as soon as we form a clear and distinct idea of it. Huh. That's Benedict Spinoza back in 1632, you know, or so, in the 1600s, was talking about this. Though pride is not a virtue, it is the parent of many virtues. Okay? So I guess a certain amount of pride is a good thing, I suppose. Humility is a virtue all preach, none practice, and yet everybody is content to hear. Yeah, humility. I know, love thy neighbor, right? That has to do with humility. A pious man is one who would be an atheist if the king were. That which we call sin in others is experiment for us. Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Well, I don't know how you think about these brilliant thoughts, you know, but here they are. And maybe something brilliant will strike you and maybe cause you to be more brilliant. So one of the reasons that I asked, if you're already brilliant, you have to be more brilliant with brilliant thoughts. Anyway, I have a feeling that this video is deteriorating into nonsense here very quickly, so I'm going to try to rescue it because I have my son Patrick here, and you know, I want to use him as a fact checker because it's interesting, you know, when I put some videos out there, you know, that I have, you know, I make statements. For instance, I want to point to my most recent video. I said that my dad controlled 40,000 acres of hunting rights. Well, no, that wasn't the case at all, actually, because it had to have been, first of all, they didn't have acres, so they were hectares, okay? And I went to Google and I looked it up. A hectare is actually 2.471 acres. Okay. 40,000 hectares would be 98,800 acres. And if you turn that into square miles, that's 154,000 some square miles. And that would also mean that if you take the square root of that, and turn it into a square, it's like 392 miles on one side. And I know it wasn't that big. It was big, but it wasn't 400 miles on one side, okay? So I think we're talking about 4,000 hectares. Now, even 4,000 hectares as a square, and of course these land masses were not necessarily square. There was nothing square about it. But even at that, you still had like 100 miles on each side if you turn it into a square. So most likely, the hunting rights were 4,000 hectare, and that would almost be 10,000 acres. So that, I think, is how we dispense of that particular issue. But just what's worth mentioning about the hunting rights, which is actually, it's an ownership. It's basically, like an estate ownership of 4,000 hectares. The hunting rights really meant that he didn't own the land, but he owned the right to hunt. And the people that lived on the land may have owned part of the land or rented it. In some fashion, they owned the land or possessed it, but they did not have the hunting rights. The hunting rights were given to somebody else, which is really kind of a European thing. And you might want to Google this and find out some more about it. But anyway, the big thing, the big idea that I want to leave you with is that my dad said there was something in season all year around. In other words, when he had visitors, he could always take them hunting for something. It was either birds or maybe it was fishing and so forth. So anyway, I do want to go through some of the current news because I'd like to just kind of capture the, as I said before, capture what's going on right now and the things that concern us. So for that, I've saved a stack of these weeks worth of these journals, and I'm just going to go through the headlines a little bit so that we keep that as a record for the future. So the headlines, on Monday, March 21, 2022, Ukraine assault uproots 10 million. 10 million. And that's probably more than that by now. But the Ukraine war is still going on. Russia's bid to cut its imports reliance falls short. So high fuel prices sting small businesses, etc. This is what's being reported by our media right now. And the following day, Russia presses a grinding attack. Okay, U.S. sends Soviet air defenses to Ukraine. It's just every day, there is this continual onslaught of news on the Ukraine. A Boeing 737 crashes in southern China with 132 on board. And this plane went straight down. There's some videos of it. Went straight down from 21,000 feet high down into the ground, and just left a big divot in the ground. And if what we can see from the videos, you can't recognize that there was even a plane there. There was some debris here and there, but they did find the black box. So this plane with 132 people went straight down in 72 seconds from 21,000 feet all the way down. They still don't know what the hell happened. How could this happen? Well, a more significant thing that's going on right now that will probably affect us for a long time, and that is the hearings for the new Supreme Court justice is in progress. Judge Ken Tunji Brown Jackson made their appearance, in front of the TV with the Senate Judiciary Committee, and of course, it's to some extent contentious, as you might expect. Flood of refugees strain European neighbors. Ukraine's escape as barrage intensifies. But, so they're talking, the headlines, as you will notice, are talking just about, what a terrible thing this is, and that's exactly what it is. But how terrible it is for the Ukrainians, and also how terrible it is for the Russians. And you'll see, that Russians press their attack and so forth, and the Ukrainians are escaping. Their buildings are being bombed, etc. And nobody's really talking about the Russian plan as such, as to what's what do they really have in mind. But the first picture that is kind of, or the first article that is a little bit sympathetic toward the Russians, because right now the Russians are really just, everything is their fault, is that they have a photograph here, and it says Russian casualties are mounting. Again, the press is basically saying it's not going well for the Russians. But maybe it is going to plan. Do you have any thoughts on that at all, Patrick?
The only thing we know currently, and this can always change and can always be impacted by propaganda from one side or another, but it seems like the Russians intended to take Kiev in less than 2 weeks. And when they failed to take the capital in less than 2 weeks, they switched to a more time-sensitive approach, where they're going to be digging in and surrounding the city over a period of weeks, if not months, with some people saying that it's going to take as long as till the end of April for them to take Kiev.
Wow.
But that's, the 2 weeks thing is from letters that were captured on Russians who either surrendered or were captured or killed. The April proponent is just what a lot of guys who have been to Iraq and saw U.S. military strategy think that the Russians are now pivoting to.
Okay, so they're going more toward a siege strategy. Well, that could very well be. It's definitely not a blitzkrieg anymore. And some of the newspapers are talking about some articles in here. They're talking about Russia is, as Patrick just said, indeed pivoting, and it looks like they want to hold the Donbas region, which is heavily populated by Russians. They also want a land bridge to the Crimea, and evidently that they don't have that, which surprises me, But anyway, so our President Biden wants G20 to expel Russia. So anyway, Biden went to for NATO meetings, to Poland, and to huddle with the NATO nations and see what can be done. And the last headlight here is that shows President Biden eating pizza with the soldiers that we have dispatched to Poland, and I'm not sure for what purpose, but there must be a good purpose there. And here he is, eating pizza with our soldiers. Well, that's a good thing, that he goes in there and improves morale, hopefully. And I hope nobody calls him Brandon or anything like that, because he is the president. But, you may have noticed that Russia pivots its focus in Ukraine, just what we were talking about, and just had the benefit of Patrick's analysis on this. All right. So this video here, we're about halfway through, but I do want to talk about aunts and uncles a little bit more because I had that request. So I'm going to call this video probably Aunts and Uncles Part 2. But this time I want to talk about my mom's siblings. And she had a brother and a sister. And the brother was an older brother, and the sister was younger. So mom was the middle child. And the older brother, his name was Oscar. And Oscar was was the apple of my grandfather's eye, so to speak, because I guess he looked to him, to maybe go into the same business that he was in. I'm not entirely sure, but I do know this, that Oscar joined the army. He had to do, prescription service for, actually at the time, for the Polish army, because that was before the outbreak of World War II. And so if you lived in Poland, then you had to do your selective service duty in Poland, So he went into the army, to do his perfunctory duty, while my grandfather was in Cape Town, South Africa, setting up cloth weaving factories for a British company, And actually, Wilhelm liked Africa so much that he was planning to move his family there, because things were going well for him, and he was not just building the factory but also running it, and so he expected to be there for some time. That was Cape Town, South Africa. I've got stories that he used to tell me about that area, some funny stories also. But anyway, I do know this, is that when Oscar, his only son, got pneumonia and died in the service, he immediately came back, quit everything in South Africa, had no more zest for moving to South Africa, came home back to Poland, and of course, he immediately got a job running a factory in Skiertz also. So, because he was a highly skilled man in the cloth manufacturing business, weaving, so he, these weaving machines were pretty complex, and he understood them very well. Anyway, so that was the thing, that's why I think that he had a really high expectations of his son, and he just lost the zest for doing anything but kind of getting by. Tante Lotte was the younger daughter. So when my mom left, during our flight from East Germany or from Poland, she was in her early 30s, and Tante Lotte was in her 20s. So she also escaped on her own. As a matter of fact, she and her mom, my grandmother, they were in a concentration camp someplace, and somehow she escaped. The aunt, and came and found us in West Germany. And then she was a really interesting person, because she could speak English, and so she had learned English in school, And because we were in the American sector, that really worked well for her. So she immediately was able to work, and I think for the Americans or maybe for the Germans. I'm not sure exactly what kind of job she had, but she became a translator, and translated documents, translated was the intermediary between the Americans and the Germans. And there she met her future husband. Now, exactly where she met him is not clear to me, but what is clear to me is that he was one of those, what they called the Volga Germans. And in a previous video, I've talked about him before because he was part of a group of some of his drunken friends that came to serenade my mom in the middle of the night. It really pissed her off, but they were singing, Russian songs, and in that guttural Russian singing that you can hear even today because it's still popular, because it's folk music. Anyway, so this guy, I can't remember his first name, but his last name was Nahirny. And he was one of those Volga Germans and had to leave because, anything German had to be, things probably didn't go well for you if you were stuck with the Russians. So anyway, they had a car, and it was interesting. They had actually a British car. It was called a Essex Super 6, and it was converted to a wood burner, had a wood burning stove in the back. And I've also talked about that in the past. So Tante Lotte and her husband, they decided to move to Australia, and they moved to Australia. And there they decided to go into the business of laundromats. And so they moved to Sydney, and they owned in Sydney a bunch of laundromats and just kept buying them and so forth. And so accumulated pretty good money. She also had a child by Mr. Nahirny, and his name was Peter. And then probably in the 70s, mid-70s, her husband died. And she lost the zest to about continuing in Sydney, and evidently sold everything and took the bunch of money that she had and came to West Germany and bought some apartment buildings in downtown Augsburg and just continued to live and do well. Now, I really don't know much about that Tante Lotte from then on, other than my mom and she were in communication. They wrote to each other quite a bit because they had a really tight relationship. So that was my mom's side. And at this point in time, I have no idea what's going on with Tante Lotte. I had a brief relationship with her son, Peter. Relationship meaning email relationship. And we talked once in a while, but somehow I must have done something to really piss him off because he quit answering my emails, and that was it. So that's basically the story about aunts and uncles. And I think this video is now long enough. So I bid you farewell, and we must infect the universe with us. Goodbye.